Welcome to another week of Howling with the Wolf. I'm Cameron Wolfe. Thanks for joining me. We have another week of football, another week of Dolphins chaos to talk about after last week. There was a lot of incredible losing, incredible. It was just a lot. It was a lot going on. So we're going to talk about that. Another week of the Antonio Brown situation. This time with more serious things to talk about. And now that he's with the Patriots, he's coming in town for the Dolphins this week. So there is plenty to talk about just in this week's game, this Dolphins-Patriots game. So I think we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on that. But beyond that, we can talk about whatever throughout the NFL. You guys know the deal. Fire away your questions. I'll answer those as I go across the day. But to kick off, I'm just going to talk about a few of the topics that are interesting me around the Dolphins and the Patriots. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is and I titled this episode behind this. The Dolphins are really that bad. I think we all knew that this was going to be a rebuilding year. But I don't know if everybody thought that it would look this bad. And, you get beat 59-10 at home to start the year. There are a lot of questions that will be raised at this point about this team. I've heard some commentators asking the question already, is this the worst Dolphins team ever? Is this the worst NFL team ever? Could they go 0-16? Could this be another situation like the Browns where, they're winless? 0-16 this year, 1-15, that type of range. And my answer is, I think is absolutely within the possibility. I think, what we learned, I guess through 1 week of this Dolphins team is that there is a huge talent gap on this Dolphins team. And, a lot of it was done a week before the season with their moves, particularly the Laramie Tunsil and the Kenny Stills trade. But I think that ultimately, they are what they are. They are, a team that's looking ahead to the future. They are, not really ready to compete, and we got to deal with it. The one thing that we've sort of harped on, I've harped on in my writing with ESPN and a lot of the writers locally is like, what does this mean for the locker room? And, we walk around the locker room. I walk around the locker room on a daily basis, kind of trying to gauge what guys' personality or persona is at this point. What does this mean to them? How do you deal with the season where, maybe you're losing and that, hey, I'm coming into a year where I'm probably not going to win a lot of games. How do you get up for that sort of thing? And I think guys are trying to figure that out on their own. A lot of guys have decided, hey, maybe I play for pride. Maybe I play for the chance to put stuff on tape. And maybe I play because, I want to prove people wrong. And, I think a lot of guys in that locker room were embarrassed last week. And you use that embarrassment as your fuel, quote unquote. That's what you hope that guys will do. And I think that's really what, as fans, you got to hope. If you don't want your team to be embarrassed, you hope they use that embarrassment as fuel and don't check out. I know there were some reports out of last week's game that, hey, guys are saying, get me out of here. And I haven't heard anything to that extent, but it didn't surprise me because guys have already expressed to me, some of their unhappiness, some of their frustration with the situation. And that's one thing that I've kind of stressed throughout the process is that, this isn't Madden. I don't know how many of you guys have ever played Madden, but you can get into franchise mode and you can simulate through a season. So yeah, you can do a lot of different things and decide to draft a quarterback and build around a young quarterback and draft picks and trade around this player. But these are real people with real life decisions, so it doesn't work as smoothly like that when you're really in the NFL. So that's one thing I hope that the Dolphins and their front office is cognizant of, how this impacts their team and their players, and how they kind of deal with this, especially this week. And this is kind of a transition into Patriots week. They play the New England Patriots twice every year, and that's sort of the creme de la creme, if I said that right, of just how you do this in the NFL. They seem to be in the title contention every single year with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and they're sort of that Patriot way. Although I asked Bill Belichick about the Patriot way this week, and he said he didn't know what I was talking about. He didn't know what that meant either. for whatever that's worth. But I think that, you look at the Patriots and if the Dolphins got beat by 49 points with the Ravens, you're like, how bad could it get against New England? This is a team that the Dolphins have had a lot of success against in Miami. They've won 5 of their last 6, but this isn't your grandfather's, grandfathers or uncles or even brothers Dolphins team. I don't think they have much of a chance this week, and I think really the goal is to, hey, don't get beat by 49 points. One factor I guess to kind of discuss about on the Patriots angle, and we discussed this a little bit last week here, is Antonio Brown's coming into town, and he's probably playing his first game in the NFL season. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the news with Antonio Brown recently. He had some allegations come up recently. He's had all the drama that's come up, but it sounds like he's going to play Sunday, and the Dolphins are prepping as if he's playing Sunday. So you got Antonio Brown in that secondary. You got Julian Edelman in that secondary. You got Josh Gordon in that secondary. It could get ugly. It could get ugly. And the scariest part of last week for me, watching the Dolphins, is that this is a team where their secondary was supposed to be probably their strongest part of their team, and they were getting exposed. Lamar Jackson was over there throwing lollipops, up there for touchdowns all week. So that's something that they're gonna have to gear up on all game. And I was talking to Xavier Howard in the locker room, and these guys have a lot of pride. Xavier Howard, Rashad Jones, a lot of these DBs in the back corner, they don't want to get exposed. They play for pride, so I think they're going to be ready to go, at least in that back group. And I think that a lot of guys were humbled by that score that we saw last week. So I think when you look at the Patriots, they're definitely Super Bowl contenders, definitely a team that you look at and say, this is a mismatch. And, I think it's a 19-point spread for the Patriots right now playing in Miami. So it could get ugly. I think so. But, you never know with these Miami games in New England. So that's sort of my initial thoughts, for the Patriots, Miami. As always, if you guys have any questions about the Dolphins, about the NFL, about Patriots, about anything, fire them away in that chat. This is sort of my medium to you guys to kind of chat and give you guys my opinion on a variety of different things that's going on throughout this league. I think one thing that just sort of caught my eye, just I guess over this last week, is just the Jets. We had Adam Gase down here in Miami, I guess for the last 3 years, and I covered him last year. And I was watching him today do a news conference on Sam Darnold, and he was talking about how he has mono and all this stuff is going on with the Jets. And I just was like, man, this is just a episode of Adam Gase's career. He seems to always have all these injuries. He's got these sort of built-in excuses that come in with him. And now he's got another one. And I was just watching his body language and his demeanor when he saw when he was talking about Sam Darnold having mono, and it was like his dog died. And you just see sort of all these different drama elements that come across the NFL, whether it's, Adam Gase and Sam Darnold and the mono thing, whether it's Antonio Brown in Oakland or New England, whether it's Miami, how bad can they really be? I think that we're all kind of drawn to the drama of the NFL, especially early in the season, to the point that, I don't think there's really any talk about who the best team is or why that even matters. It's just a drama fest. So I'm always intrigued about, hearing different drama things. But I guess as an NFL reporter, there's the old saying that you would rather your team either be extremely good or bad enough where they make some headlines. And I guess the team that I cover in the Dolphins on a daily basis is bad enough to create headlines, and they have throughout the process. I'll transition a little bit. I didn't talk about it a lot last week. I kind of wanted to hit on it a little bit. The Laramie Tunsil trade to Houston last week. A lot of attention was on Laramie Tunsil, and rightfully so, because he was extremely good left tackle. And I think I discussed last week of why I was a little hesitant on that and why I thought that was such an important move, right or wrong for the franchise. But I didn't talk a lot about Kenny Stills, and I saw he talked to Houston media this week for the first time, since that game. He got he got a touchdown that would have been the go-ahead. That was the go-ahead touchdown. Would have been the game winner. But I think that there should be a little bit more conversation about what he did in South Florida. I did a lot of coverage on him while I was out, while he was out here on his activism trail. And I think that, the impact that he made in South Florida, the impact he made on the player protest movement is something that is very important. And I think that South Florida, maybe not necessarily the Dolphins as much, but South Florida will miss him as a guy. And I think that Houston is going to get a big boost for him getting there. So I think that's something that kind of got swept under the radar because Laramie Tunsil was the big name in there. But I think Kenny Stills is going to really help out that Texas football team and that Houston community. So I know he's a guy that, I enjoyed having around the locker room. And, you don't have favors as an NFL reporter, but, he was a guy I always enjoyed talking to. So it kind of sucks that that's not something that you get on a daily basis. So I just wanted to add that nugget because I didn't talk about it last week. And I'll go ahead and jump on some of you guys' questions. So Haddon Gross has a question and says, are you surprised by how poor the defense looked against the Ravens? He's talking about the Dolphins. Yeah, I am. Haddon, I think I really am. I think I thought that the offense was going to look abysmal, and the offense did look abysmal. But I thought that the defense would be the strongest part of their team. And I thought that, when you look at this Dolphins team, you were going to find a team that was going to have a lot of trouble getting off the line of scrimmage, have a lot of trouble finding their way and getting the ball to their offensive playmakers because everything was going to move so quickly. And I think that, that's something that we did see, and I think we'll continue to see it. But what surprised me was how much they got torched in the defensive backfield. And I think I talked about this a little bit with Lamar Jackson, but I talked to a couple of DBs in the locker room, and the biggest thing that they told me was that they game planned as if the Ravens were going to run the ball seven, 8 times, 9 times in a row, and they were just going to pass when they had to. They planned on this being a run-heavy team with Mark Ingram and Lamar Jackson, killing them with their legs. And the arm was an afterthought. And to me, that was a big flaw in coaching game plan. And I had a lot of defensive players that were kind of, not necessarily publicly questioning, but privately and sort of like modestly kind of giving a nudge like, hey, why did we never switch? Why did we not switch when we saw Lamar Jackson throwing it up to Hollywood Brown multiple times early in the game? Why didn't we switch? And that's something that, we tried to ask Patrick Graham. He wasn't really eager and answer those questions other than saying that, hey, they thought the Ravens were going to run the ball. But I think that's a clear sign that the coaching staff, prepped for something that they didn't receive and they didn't adjust well. So, it wasn't a good game for the coaching staff. It wasn't a good game for the players. And I think the score indicated all of that. So I think that kind of answers your question, Haddon. I was really surprised. But I do think the defensive backfield will respond a little bit, particularly this week. It won't help them. I don't think it'll help them get a win, but I don't think they're going to get exposed as badly as they did against the Ravens. I think there was a time in the first half where the Ravens had scored 4 touchdowns and they only had 2 third downs that they even had to convert. So I think that just kind of showed how up and down they were moving across the field. So definitely something that was eye-opening and embarrassing for that defense, particularly that defensive backfield. You guys have any other questions, fire it up. I do want to bring one thing into the conversation. One thing that I was going through, if I could find it, I just had it over here earlier. I wanted to bring you guys a little bit of a glimpse. Hold on one second. I'll be right back. All right, here I go. Sorry. Hey, Ma, how you doing? I wanted to bring one thing to you guys, kind of a glimpse inside the locker room, something I thought of throughout the week, maybe give you guys a little glimpse of what conversations are like in the locker room. So this week there was a lot of talk about their loss and what everything was going on in their mind and their loss and how everybody was feeling and sort of the demeanor of the locker room. But we sort of have light moments in the locker room all the time. And I think it was All right. You guys see me? Are we all good? Are we all good? Are we all good? Yes, I think we're back. Okay. All right. So sorry about that. Technical difficulty came across. Um, essentially, what I was about to say. I'll answer one of you guys' questions, and I'll come to the segment that I was trying to go about. Um, Haddon has another question coming in. He says the struggle of being a Dolphins fan, but also wanting to root for ex-Fins, Tunsil and Stills, but also wanting to pick from the Texans. Yes, that's definitely something I'm sure Dolphins fans deal with a lot. I think that for those who don't know, the Texans gave up the Dolphins their first round pick. So every time the Texans lose, the Dolphins get a higher pick, which is definitely a dub. But I'm sure everybody had to be pumped to see Kenny Stills get that touchdown. Tunsil played well, but he gave up a sack late that kind of led to the loss. So yeah, that's a tough dilemma. But essentially, what I was about to say earlier, there are moments in the locker room where they're very light. So Wednesday, I was in the locker room and there was an obsession with two or three different groups with my shorts. These shorts that I have right here, they're jean shorts. I just got them not too long ago. I wear shorts every day in South Florida. So essentially, I got to get some new shorts sometimes. So first I was talking to the DBs, and they had different opinions on about whether they like these shorts or not. Xavier Howard, Bobby McCain, Walt Aikens, we're all debating on whether they like these shorts or not. There was two that said they did like it. One that was kind of questioning them. So we had a discussion for about 5 minutes about whether these were going on. And then I was about to walk out of the locker room, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, the quarterback, yells to me. He says, "Hey man, are those jorts or Japris?" And I'm like, "What?" I turn around and we have another discussion about whether these are jorts or Japris. And these are of course jean shorts here. They're a little longer, but Ryan Fitzpatrick was getting me a conversation because he thought the length was over the knee that they should be qualified as Japris. And I told him, hey, if I start coining that Japrise phrase, ultimately, I hope I don't owe you any money, any marketing because, that sort of coining. And he said, no, I wouldn't owe him anything. So we had a debate between that. The tight ends jumped in. We decided if Mike Gesicki would wear those jeans. He said he wouldn't wear them. Nick O'Leary said he would wear them, but he would cut them and add an American flag to them. I thought that was interesting to me. It's just sort of a little insight of what sort of our relationships are and how you sort of have locker room banter about stuff that has nothing to do with the game or football or in general. So I want to give you guys a little insight on that, and kind of what I might deal with on a daily basis. So I got to be careful on my short collections, what I wear to practice because the guys are watching. I do get props on my shoes, which I love. I'm always coming with the Jordans in there, so they always give me props on that. But, it was a lot of split opinions on the shorts when I brought those in. So I appreciate y'all going with me on that segue. And then I'll go ahead and answer Jason's question. And then we'll start to wrap up, and I'll let you guys get back into the groove so y'all can watch some Sunday night football. Thursday night football. Thank you. My wife said it's Thursday night football. Sorry, mixing up my days. Jason Wedgwood is saying, hey, Cameron, is Coach Flores hearing the noise about his job security after one game? I know that a lot of people have been talking about this topic, and, it's worth asking, particularly because of all the reports that have come up about him losing the locker room and guys wanting out and that sort of thing. And that that's the reason why I think it's a question, not because they lost by 49 points. Here's my view. I think Brian Flores is safe no matter what in 2019. I think unless he gets some kind of crazy off the field scandal where he does something that's I guess something that irreparable, or something where his locker room completely revolts to the point where guys say, hey, we do not want him as head coach. I think that he's safe. Stephen Ross had this plan towards patience. He kind of preached this going into the coaching change. They just made a coaching change with Adam Gase. They're still paying Adam Gase's contract to an extent this year. They gave Brian Flores a 5-year guaranteed contract. So I don't think that Brian Flores is any at any significant risk of being fired in this year. I think that he's going to get at least 2 years, probably at least 3 years minimum to figure this out. I know every time I mention that, Steve Wilkes pops into my head because Steve Wilkes, the Arizona coach, was fired after a year. I don't think he should have been fired, in my opinion, but the organization obviously saw something that they decided to fire him. The one name that always pops up when these conversations happen, John Harbaugh. That's a guy that, obviously Steve Ross being a Michigan man, John Harbaugh comes about. People are like, well, if that means that, they would move on from Brian Flores, I would be really shocked. I would be really shocked if the Dolphins, moved on from Brian Flores after a year. That would be really unfair to him because this roster has been, really bad. I'll just be kind and just say it's really bad, overall. And I think that it's unfair to judge him off of a year. So, yes, he's made his mistakes here and there in his first year head coach realm, but I think that it's a really difficult job. And I think that we probably shouldn't evaluate him on wins and losses and how he handles this situation until maybe year 2 or year 3. So that's kind of my view on that, Jason. He's talking about my shorts. He said, you tell those guys they will get shorter if they play as badly as they did this Sunday. I don't want to bring them too short because here's my thing. The higher they go, the more you start seeing some thigh. And thigh is good to an extent, but too much thigh, I think you go into sort of that beach wear. And I don't think that's what we're trying to do on a daily basis. So I think, knee length, slightly above length, knee, slightly below knee is where we try to live. That's my zone. That's me right there. So yeah, I think that's sort of kind of my overview on Flores. I think another question that's going to come up is Chris Grier. I think that, we brought up the question as a media group whether Chris Grier should have been the one speaking to the Dolphins press crew and therefore you guys as fans when this trade was happening. And I think that's something that's a real question that should have been asked because, Chris Grier is the face of this organization. And I think that, for him to kind of put an outlet of a plan for, hey, what are we doing? And I know tanking is a word that everybody hates in the organization. Every time we use it, they cringe. They think we're making fun of them. But I think that, it's just a realization that, hey, this year doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, 2020, 2021. And, when you trade Laramie Tunsil, that seems like that's a hiccup in what we all thought was the plan. We all thought veterans were going to be getting rid of throughout the year, whether it's TJ McDonald or Akeem Spence. Those were mild surprises, but they were veterans who didn't have long-term futures here. So they made a lot of sense. But when you have a Laramie Tunsil trade, and I would tell you, players were shocked. They never saw that coming. Media was shocked. It was a situation where it's like, this doesn't add up to what we thought the plan was, the rebuild plan was. So what's the update? What changed here? And obviously the compensation is a big reason why, but that's something that really threw a lot of people on a loop. And that's something that, it would have been great to get Chris Grier's perspective on what the long-term vision was. And it was a tough position for Flores because he can't tell his team that 2019 doesn't matter, but Grier can in a sense. So that's sort of my view on that. And yeah, Jason, I think you're right. I think you have to give a guy in Flores, and I think Grier too, 2, 3 at least years to kind of figure this out because, you signed them up for a long-term project, so you have to give them the time to do it. So I think there's a lot of times we'll look throughout the year, there's going to be guys on the hot seat, maybe in Washington, maybe in Detroit with Matt Patricia, maybe in Dallas if things don't go well for Jason Garrett, maybe in let me see, I guess in Jacksonville could be a possibility if things don't go well out there. A lot of different places, but I don't think Miami should be one of those places. I think they should be in the conversation for first overall pick, but I shouldn't be worried in January about a coaching or a GM search. That I hope. So yeah, man, I think that's about it for us, guys. If you guys have any final questions, fire it up. I know the Panthers and the Bucks are about to play Thursday night, so I'll let you guys get on to that. And yeah, we'll be back here same time next week. Hopefully, I'll bring you guys something new, insightful from the locker room, and bring you guys some more insight. So as always, thank you guys for watching. And go Cougs. They play Friday night against Wazoo. Calling the upset now.